something that has a legacy, right? Which in many different cultures, Aristotle wrote about like a period blood being impure. In India, we have women who had to sit outside their houses, for example, when they were on their period. And I think it's basically, it all comes from a lack of information and understanding. Like, what is a period, right? A period, quite simply, is just a bodily function, which it's the lining of your womb shedding because you're not pregnant. And it's actually quite an amazing thing, because having your period every month reminds you that, women have this amazing capability to bear children, right?
Yep.
And it's a bodily function, but I think just lack of information about knowing what it is and knowing that it's really natural and normal is what leads to the taboo.
Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to our channel, consider subscribing to it and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update. Our episodes go live at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. every day through the week. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am privileged to welcome a young social entrepreneur, Ira Guha. Ira, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Ira is the founder and CEO of Asan, which is a mission to eradicate period poverty across the world. She's from Cambridge and she's from the Harvard Kennedy School. So Ira, tell me, after Cambridge and Harvard, why did you decide to become a social entrepreneur?
So Ashutosh, it wasn't deliberate. This was a very organic project that started just through conversations I was having with people. So while I was living in London and working in consulting, I visited my parents who live in Bangalore one Christmas. And they had a part-time cook who had missed out a couple of days of work. And we thought she was ill, and she came back to work, and I was just chatting to her and I said, what happened? And it actually transpired she wasn't ill. She just had her period. And this was back in 2016, 2017, when there was a real push to use these low-cost sanitary pads made from, plastic, and they've got all kinds of toxic chemicals in them. And they're really thick, almost like diapers. And these pads were giving her terrible rashes and a UTI to the extent that she had to miss out on work. And at the time, I was, absolutely shocked, because I've always been able to, afford period products and do things on my period. And then I started doing a little bit of research, and I learned that, this problem that our cook had was pretty much universal in the developing world. 50% of women and girls can't afford access to basic period products. And that's when I started, researching it and looked at the solution of menstrual cups, which we then started working on developing at the Harvard Innovation Lab.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about Asan.
So Asan, it's, you might be familiar with the word. It's a Hindi word. It means easy or worry-free.
Oh, yeah, I got the pronunciation wrong.
It
was the yoga.
So
Asan is easy. Wonderful. Okay.
Exactly. So Asan's mission is to eradicate period poverty across the world. So our product is a reusable menstrual cup. I've actually got it here to show people who are watching.
Yeah.
So the Asan cup was developed at the Harvard Innovation Lab over a 2-year period. It's made from medical grade silicone, which is the same material that's used in breast implants and stents. And why it's so special is it's reusable. So one Asan cup can be reused to manage your period over and over for 10 years. So it's that means, it's extremely affordable, firstly, because you just need one. And it's also extremely sustainable because it completely averts the landfill waste that's generated every month by pads and tampons. And the way that Asan works is we operate a 1-for-1 donation scheme. So we sell the cup to anybody, anywhere in the world who can afford it. And then for every cup we sell, we donate one for free to a woman, for example, a domestic worker like the person I spoke about, or someone in a rural area who can't afford access to period products.
Okay. And, you said it was developed in the Harvard labs. For our viewers and listeners, tell me, what have been some of your challenges and your learnings as you developed something like this?
So For me especially, so I studied politics and then I was studying public policy. I don't have a technical background, so so there were kind of two groups of challenges, right? One is the on the engineering side, which is, I had to work very closely with. We had an engineer from the Harvard Design School who was actually making the product, and we had to test all kinds of silicon materials to find the safest one, for example. So there were a whole lot of technical challenges, and then the other set of challenges, which might be more interesting for listeners, was that this is a period product, and this is an area which is really taboo everywhere in the world, whether in Boston or in India, right? So we had a whole host of challenges around getting good customer feedback on the product. So for example, we had, a pilot group of 20 low-income women in India who, and this is our fifth iteration of the cup, right? Because we had to make it, collect feedback, iterate it, and improve it each time. And when we were collecting feedback, even as women talking to women, because we are so ingrained that, periods are shameful and we shouldn't talk about that part of our body, it was really, really hard to get good qualitative feedback. Is the cup leaking? Does it hurt to insert it? How long can you wear it for? There was so much information I needed that was really hard to get, just because it's not something we talk about openly. And honestly, by the end of our pilot, I had just roped in so many close friends from across the world to try the product, just because we had that trusted relationship where I knew they would give me good feedback.
And it's an interesting thing that you just commented. And I've often wondered, something as natural as a period, why is it considered to be such a taboo amongst everybody? I mean, you must have done some research on this.
I mean, it's something that really goes back to medieval times.
I agree. Now, I'm saying now in the modern world, why is it?
I think it's just this. I mean, it's something that has a legacy, right? Which in many different cultures, Aristotle wrote about, like, a period blood being impure. In India, we have women who had to sit outside their houses, for example, when they were on their period. And I think it's basically, it all comes from a lack of information and understanding. Like, what is a period, right? A period, quite simply, is just a bodily function, which it's the lining of your womb shedding because you're not pregnant. And it's actually quite an amazing thing, because having your period every month reminds you that, women have this amazing capability to bear children, right?
Yep.
And it's a bodily function, but I think just lack of information about knowing what it is and knowing that it's really natural and normal is what leads to the taboo.
And based again on your discussion, because and I'll talk to you a little more about this, but you must be talking to a lot of influencers in this particular area. Are attitudes beginning to change?
I think they absolutely are, and I think this is true, interestingly, in all sections of society. You might see influencers on Instagram from a high income background talking about periods, trying to bust myths. But at the same time, what you don't see, but which we see in Asan working in the field, is that there's actually a lot of change and openness happening even in rural areas. And I think it's definitely to do with, again, access to information, education, social media. But yeah, definitely across the spectrum, I think that there is a lot more openness in recent years.
Very interesting. So you mentioned a little while ago that the traditional sanitary pads have a problem of landfill, etc. Tell me, what are the other benefits of using Asan versus any other form of protection?
So the benefits kind of fall into three categories, I would say. The first and the most important one, I think, is affordability. So the Asan cup is a one-time purchase, but it's going to last you 10 years, right? It costs around $25, which is 1,800 rupees. And although that's an upfront cost, that is the same as just 3 to 4 months worth of sanitary pads. Now, after month 4, you start saving. So it's extremely affordable over a 10-year period. That's the first benefit. The second is exactly what you mentioned about sustainability. Every year in India, 12.5 billion non-biodegradable sanitary pads end up in landfill. And again, for someone in a city who has a dustbin, you throw your sanitary pad away and then you don't really know where it goes and you don't worry about it. But for somebody in a rural area who doesn't have access to a developed waste management system, and also couple that with all the shame and the stigma around periods, what happens is you have to collect collect your sanitary pad maybe in a plastic bag somewhere, hide them during your period somewhere in your house, go outside your house in the middle of the night, maybe in your backyard when nobody's looking, and set fire to it, right? To burn it. And now that's going to let go of toxic fumes. So this waste management and its challenge is really enormous. And, even the downstream effects, which we don't know, is that a sanitary pad, it's got, on the one hand, it's got plastic, right? It's not biodegradable. But on the other hand, it's soiled because it's got, bodily fluids. So it's not recyclable. Mm-hmm. So what actually happens, even in a city, is when you throw your sanitary pad away, is it has to be physically picked apart by waste pickers. Oh, that is hugely damaging to their own health. And then even, from a gendered angle, often a male waste picker will say, well, I'm not going to touch this because it's female waste. So even the waste pickers who have to pick it apart end up being women. So I think the waste management challenge is just enormous. And the Asan Cup has a huge benefit to society from that perspective. And then finally, I would say the third, so there's affordability, sustainability, and then the third bucket, which we really try to stress to people, is just comfort. The Asan Cup is so much more comfortable than tampons or pads. You can wear it for 12 hours. It holds more fluid in it, 3 times more fluid than a sanitary pad. You can swim in it. You can do yoga. You can exercise. We have triathletes using it. You can sleep through the night worry-free. And, a quote that really I think from one of our users that really encapsulates how comfortable it is everything you can do when you're not on your period, you can now do on your period using the Asan Cup. That's how comfortable it is.
Incredible. So then, as someone who's a founder, who's working on marketing a new brand or a new product, what are some of your challenges in getting the message of Asan out to urban women and rural women?
So honestly, and we've touched on taboos, the main challenge we face, and I think it's more than 50% of our work, is really just breaking stereotypes and biases all the time. And it's misinformation, and for example, what we've done at Asan, in addition to, making a product, is we've made amazing content. We've got this user guide, which we designed with gynecologists. It's full of, illustrations. It teaches you about your body. And the reason we've got so much digital content doing the same thing. And the reason for that is even a woman living in a city knows so little about her own anatomy, right? So there's all these misconceptions about, using an insertable period product that we have to break down. We have to explain that it's safe. There's this myth, for example, that using a menstrual cup is going to take away your virginity. So there's a lot of kind of information that we have to disseminate in a very friendly and accessible way. And then there's also, even in this urban-rural divide, there's so many stereotypes that urban women have about rural women that we have to break down. So very often, we're talking about our donation scheme, and urban women say, well, that's not going to work because a rural woman would never use this product. It's insertable. They won't like it. Or a rural woman won't know how to clean it. But then we have to say to them, well, have you spoken to someone in a rural area? They've got the majority of women in rural areas wear cloth rags on their period. They're extremely uncomfortable. They can't even walk. It's very difficult to wash them. So when they're presented with a better solution, of course, they're going to be open to trying it. So I think it's all about just breaking the myths and also, I think bringing people from different backgrounds together. And what is so amazing about periods is that they are so universal. Okay. You could be a lawyer in New York, you could be a consultant in London, you could be, an agricultural laborer somewhere, you could be, someone like a paper recycler. It doesn't matter what your job is or your income status is. Periods are universal. Correct. And what we fundamentally believe is anyone with a period deserves access to the highest quality period product.
Well said. Well said. I mean, anyone who's a human, and you're addressing the needs of half of humanity.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So this is amazing. So, you also mentioned, about your one-for-one donation. Yeah. Tell me how this works and who qualifies.
Yeah, so absolutely. So, I'll tell you a little bit about firstly why we came up with the one-for-one donation scheme. So when I was, working on this project at Harvard, we very much thought, let's just sell this product at cost all over the world, in sub-Saharan Africa and India, to women who need it. And then when we actually started working in the field, we realized even if we were to sell it at cost, which is just going to be, a couple of dollars, women in rural areas and developing countries are not going to have that money up front. at the same time, our product was so innovative. We had so many women in our user group using other menstrual cups from, the best kind of brands from, the US or Scandinavia, who were saying to us, oh my God, we love this product. Can we buy it? Can we buy it for our friends? So we realized that, that women in higher income brackets, A, would love to buy this product, and B, would love to sponsor it for a woman in need. And that kind of takes the burden of paying for the product off women in rural areas. So that's why we came up with the 1-for-1 donation scheme. The way that it works is that Asan has developed very strong partnerships with women's health NGOs working in rural areas, and we very much depend on them to, select the beneficiaries of the product, but also, train them on how to use it and follow up with them. So we've worked to create a lot of local language content. So if you're a donation user, wherever you live, you'll get a user guide and a really in-depth training video in your local language. And then also what we do with the women's health NGOs is that we first ask their own health workers to use the cup and give us feedback. And that might just be 10 people or 20 people working in the NGO. And they use it for 3 cycles. And they come back to us saying, oh my God, this is amazing. Like this has really changed my life. And then because they've had that experience, they're now equipped to train the women they work with in villages to then start using it.
Very interesting. So one more question for you on Asan, and then I move to the next segment. What has been the reaction of men for this Asan Cup?
So I have to say I've been very pleasantly surprised, and it's been very positive. So the Asan team itself, it's myself, and we have my co-founder for the Indian business, Anuradha, and a couple of other people, and it's all women. But what's super interesting about Asan is that our mentors all happen to be men. And they all, they're also men from an older generation, they're 50 and above, but they have been super supportive. And we've been lucky to have, we had some funding we got a grant from Cambridge, this entrepreneurship panel headed by a man called Stuart Lyons, who, has a lot of experience in British industry. And he's got no relationship to this topic of period poverty, but I think the presentation just spoke to him. And again, this very universal need kind of strikes a chord with anybody, right? And similarly, we're part of an incubator in Bangalore called Include Labs that's headed by someone called Narayan Ramachandran, who used to be the CEO of Morgan Stanley, and he in India. And he, again, is, a man from an older generation. But we just got talking about the product, and I think it's this universal idea that half of humanity faces this issue. And it's also this idea that if you can just fix this small thing, it really leads to economic empowerment that really clicks with people. Women and girls don't have to miss out on school. They don't have to miss out on work. It's just clearly so beneficial. So we've actually have an amazing team of male supporters and mentors, and they've been super open to it.
Fantastic. And have you also attempted to be able to communicate the significant improvement in quality of life maybe can be converted into economics for women?
So I think we've tried to do a lot of it through storytelling. So for example, we have this video which I shared with you where
I saw that, and
very simple. We have women saying, look, earlier I could never go to work, or I could never do all of these activities. I used to sit them out, and now I can do them. And so I think that, and even from a health perspective, the number of days of work you would have to miss because you have UTIs or because you have rashes is enormous. I think as we scale and to hundreds and thousands of more women, we would love to do some kind of quantitative study where we might be able to quantify that.
Very interesting. So Ira, I'm now going to move to a few questions for you personally. For someone who wanted to go into politics and who did so much more in terms of giving back now to the women of the world, what are some of the core values you believe in?
So I think that probably the most important one would be gender equality. And that's seen through the work of Asan, but that's also just something I think my parents or my friends probably are very tired of me talking about in every single conversation. But even in the way I live my life, I think gender equality is probably the most important thing, because again, I think it's something that's universal, and I don't think it's different whether you are from India or whether you are from the US or somewhere else. It's just something that we haven't achieved yet, and at every level of income. So I think gender equality is probably the most important one. And then another value that I believe in very strongly is individual freedom and agency. And I think it's very easy, again, for someone from a privileged background, who's well educated, to assume that someone from a rural area isn't going to make a good choice for themselves, or isn't capable of agency. And I think that that's, again, a really big myth that we're trying to break, because I think and I mean, it's incredible what you learn from women, even who aren't educated, when they're just given information and choice. That I think those are just the most important things. And even with the Asan Cup, we're not trying to force it on anyone. We're just trying to say, look, here's the information about your health. Here's the information about your cost savings. Now you make a decision. And it's amazing how everybody has agency and will make a great decision just given the right resources.
Fascinating. So let me then ask you a question on gender equality. I mean, I'm a very big believer in it, and I've sat on global boards, part of the United Nations also, where gender diversity, gender balance has been spoken about for the last 15 years. But in India, we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What is your view on being able to reduce, or rather not reduce, but hasten up this whole challenge of gender equality, because laws exist?
It's such a challenging topic.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, the laws do exist, but we need huge amount of intervention, I think, both from the bottom and from the top. The top is our role models, our politicians, the people we see in public life, representation. We've got some amazing political leaders, for example, in India, chief ministers of states, for example. But how many women do we have as local members of parliament?
Correct.
How many women do we have who we see every day in these positions of power? That's one thing that I think is really important, in terms of visibility. And then from the bottom level, I think just education is absolutely the most important thing. From a young age, from puberty, how do we talk about equality? How do we talk about things like periods? How do we bring young boys into the conversation and essentially just teach people that both boys and girls are capable of exactly the same things, right?
Correct. Very interesting. So my next question to you is, you're very young and there's a long life ahead and many, many things that you will do. But from where you stand today, what does success mean to Ira?
It is very much tied into eradicating period poverty. That is completely what drives me. And success would be improving people's lives for the better who don't have access to basic resources like period products. And I would say, for me, when I look at eradicating period poverty, success is not building a commercially successful business necessarily, or success is not, I guess, Asan doing well. Success is, if we were to learn that actually this business model is not working, but maybe you could do a foundation where there are people who are willing to donate these products for free. Or if you were to learn that this model is wrong and there's a different kind of model that's actually better suited to eradicating period poverty, that would be completely fine. I'm not tied to the model. I'm just tied to the mission, which is everybody needs to have access, everybody across the world. And that's currently, over 1 billion people who don't have access need to have access to safe period.
Fantastic. I have time for 2 more questions for you. The next question is that, from my conversation, you're doing some amazing stuff. My question is, who or what inspires you?
So it's really, this is coming back to a point I've made before, but it really is our donation users. It's when I get to spend just one day in the field chatting to women who previously, used drags and then tried our cup and now their lives have been completely transformed by it. I just learned so much from them. These are women, we've been running a pilot in Kanakapura, in a couple of villages outside Kanakapura, which is in Karnataka. And, you speak to the women there, they all have, many kids who they cook for every day. They've got full-time jobs. They work as health workers. They work as paper recyclers. They've got all of these obligations. And they also, you realize they love having fun. They're just like us, they've got all they've got pleasures, they've got holidays they like to go on. And, they're just so amazingly open-minded. When we present them with the choice of the Asan Cup, they jumped at it. And I think it really is, it's women in rural India who are just doing such amazing work, who are so open-minded, who inspire me.
Fantastic. And my last question to you, and this is for many, many people who will listen to everything that you've said. You're a social entrepreneur, and when I speak to a lot of millennials, and the Gen Zs, they want to give back through social entrepreneurship. So my question to you is, what would your advice be to a young individual who wants to start off on a journey as a social entrepreneur?
I think it would be to just focus on the problem that you're solving. And that's because as entrepreneurs, we're always faced with like targets, and we're always told to think about scale. I think people are obsessed with scale. So no matter what problem you're solving, people, if you have a VC or a mentor, the first thing they're going to say is, what's the revenue? How many people are you going to impact? How many lives are you going to change? And I think that's so high level. But if you break it down, the most important thing is just to focus on where maybe you're solving the problem of waste management. Maybe you're solving diabetes or a health condition. Just what is that problem and what is your solution? And can you solve it for one person? Can you solve it for one community or one age group? Can you solve it for one village? And can you just focus on that and focus on getting that solution right? And if you can change those people's lives on that small scale and perfect that, then of course it's going to scale. But don't get caught up, I think, with like the numbers and like trying to hit millions before you can just focus on getting the problem solved.
Very well said. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I've learned an amazing amount of stuff from you, especially about the Asan Cup. And I just wish you lots of success with eradicating period poverty.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.